Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the 8th chapter in the book of Daniel. And Daniel, all the way up till the 6th chapter, follows a chronological narrative trajectory. It describes events, but in the beginning of the 7th chapter, we witness visions, dreams, and revelations of Daniel. And the first two take place before the 6th chapter, because in the 6th chapter, Cyrus has replaced the Babylonians as the dominant power in Babylon, where Daniel is in captive and serving as the prime minister. But the 7th chapter is a vision which occurs in the first year of the reign of Belshazzar. He's the final king, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, who was deposed in a single night while he's pigging out and partying with the sacred utensils of the temple. Then a hand emerges, Daniel interprets it, telling him essentially his days are numbered. But that was in the year 539, so he did enjoy somewhat long reign for a rather wicked king. So the 7th chapter occurs in the first year of his reign, which takes us to 553 BM before Messiah. The second chapter takes place in the third year of his reign, which takes us to 551 BM. And so much of what we read in these visions is foundational to visions which have already been described. The first dream of significance occurs in the second chapter. That's when King Nebuchadnezzar is troubled, visited by a dream which troubles him and inspires a white-hot murderous passion. He's ready to kill all his astrologers and wise men and purveyors of esoteric knowledge until Daniel steps in and tells him from a blank slate the dream and its meaning. So in that dream, Nebuchadnezzar beholds a statue of a figure with a head of gold, which is likened to the Babylonian kingdom, a torso, chest and arms of silver, the Medo-Persian empire, which is going to replace it, the belly, thighs of bronze of Greece, which is going to replace the Medo-Persians, and the Romans, who have the legs of iron and the feet of clay. So from head to toe, the material decreases in quantity. And in the 7th chapter, the chapter we just read, Babylon is likened to a lion, the Medo-Persians to a bear, the Greeks to a leopard, and Rome to a terrifying beast. Now that's also a prelude to the end time anti-Messiah rule. But in the 8th chapter, they pertain with Medo-Persia and Greece, the two empires which come after Babylon. Medo-Persia is likened to a ram, Greece is likened to a goat. That being said, we're going to open with the opening verse, which reads, "In the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar, the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time." So this is once more in 551 BM, and Belteshazzar is the king of Babylon, and Daniel is visited by a vision. A vision is a revelatory form of communication which stimulates the sense of sight. So he sees something and reports it, and it has something of revelatory significance. And as we read, it is not the first one. Daniel is a man of many visions and many revelations. And I looked in the vision, and it came to be while I was looking that I was in the citadel of Susa, which is in the province of Elam. And I looked in the vision, and I was by the river Ulai. Susa was located some 200 miles southeast of Babylon. That was the capital city of the Babylonian territory. It lay in the territory of Elam, which is modern Iran. So it would have been Persian territory under the control and jurisdiction by the Babylonians, who were the dominant geopolitical entity at this moment in time. And the river Ulai would have been a canal which ran through it, and that is the where of what he beholds, and what he beholds we're going to read of in the next verses. "And I lifted my eyes and looked, and saw a ram standing beside the river, and it had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, and the one was higher than the other, and the other came up last." So he sees a ram with 2 horns, one of which is longer than the other. Each horn is respectively representative of the Medos and the Persians. These were 2 ethnicities combined and consolidated into one by Cyrus the Great, who would form the army of his conquering empire. And the longer one is, of course, the Persians. The smaller one is the Medians. And Cyrus had his day. He conquered Babylon in 539 A.D., and then his successor, Cambyses, conquered Egypt, and then Darius, his successor, spread the kingdom to 127 provinces, all the way from India to Greece. He was repelled at the Battle of Marathon, and his son and successor, Xerxes, renewed his attempt to conquer the Greeks, which was thwarted decisively. And the Persians lingered on, but they were no longer as potent until the Greeks gathered enough potency to be united. Hitherto, they had been a conglomeration of independently operative, autonomous units of city-states known as polities, until Philip of Macedon consolidated them under one rule, one control. He was assassinated, and his son picked up his united army and led it all across the Persian Empire, conquering in 10 years more than the Persians had conquered in all their time in empire. And we read of him in the 5th verse. And I was observing and saw a male goat coming from the west over the surface of all the earth, and without touching the ground. And the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. So from the west, that is Greece. Greece is each of these empire. Now, Greece is the cradle of Western civilization, so he hails from the west of Babylon, Judea, and the ancient Near East. It's from the west, and he comes with lightning speed. He conquers everything he sets foot on for a period of 10 years. He marches from Macedon all the way down to Egypt, defeats Darius III, the sitting emperor at the time, at the Battle of Gaugamela, stretches it all the way, conquers every territory that was in the Persian Empire, then extends beyond it to India, and then his troops eventually mutiny, and he is wounded in battle and comes home. But for that time, he was an unstoppable, inexorable force. And this horn which comes out of his head is a prelude to Antiochus IV, Epiphanius, who Daniel has much to say about, both especially in the 11th chapter, the 21st through 45th verses is where we read of what he has to say most about him. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing besides the river, and ran at him in the rage of his power. So this may have been a reference to Gaugamela. This was the decisive battle between the armies of Alexander and the armies of Darius III. And it's by a river somewhere in the Middle East, and in the rage of his power, he comes with his full might. His army is tangibly smaller than the substantially larger forces of the Persian. Nevertheless, he outgenerals his superior strength army and prevails over them, and the balance of power is decisively tilted in Greeks' favor for at least the next 200 years. And I saw him come close to the ram, and he became embittered against him, and smote the ram, and broke his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to withstand him. But he threw him down to the ground and trampled on him, and there was no one to deliver the ram from his hand. So Persia, there was no empire, there was no ally they could rely on once they were defeated by these usurpers from Greece who wanted what they had. They wanted control of the earth. They wanted to spread their culture and civilization from one end of the known earth to the next, and Alexander was motivated by a quest to find the end of the earth, which his troops did not share. But in any case, he was a mighty general. He did lead many mighty troops, and the power, the description with which they overcame their Persian would-be conquerors is graphic and vivid. He threw him down to the ground and trampled on him, and there was no one to deliver the ram. That's the Medo-Persians from his hand. So he's at the complete mercy and power and control of the goat, which is Greece. Now, goats are not typically ferocious creatures. Nevertheless, that is the content of this vision. Rams are more fearsome physically to look at and behold than goats, but goats do have wild streaks, and they can be strong and fierce. And the male goat became very great. But when he was strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it, 4 conspicuous ones come up towards the 4 winds of the heavens. So at the height of his power, at the apex of his power, in 323, Alexander the Great's life was claimed in Babylonia. The historical conjecture might have been typhus acquired from India. They had not built the disease resistance and the immunity, and it claimed his life while he was in the palace without naming a successor to his great empire, and he's rumored to have said, "to the strongest." And this led his generals to fight amongst themselves to craft up the empires, 4 of which came into being. One of which was the 2 dominant ones of which were Egypt, headed by the Ptolemies, and the Seleucids, whose kings varied in name from Seleucus to Antiochus. Their power base was located in Syria and Persia. And there was also a remnant in Greece and Macedonia, and also one in Upper Asia Minor. These were the 4 kingdoms that were crafted from the single kingdom, which splintered and fractured along with his death. And from one of them came a little horn, which became exceedingly great towards the south, and towards the east, and towards the splendid land. This horn is none other than Antiochus the Fourth, surname Epiphanes, who was not a legitimate ruler. He acquired the throne through deceit and subterfuge. The legitimate ruler was before the age at which kingly exercise could be permitted, so what he did was he posed as his caretaker, usurped the throne in his name, and did all sorts of wicked, abominable things. He expanded his territory, and he had a special vendetta against the splendid land, which is a reference to Judah and Israel and everything else. He did all sorts of unspeakable abominations, of which we are informed, both in the book of Maccabees and in the book of Daniel. And it came to be great, and to the host of the heavens it caused some of the host and some of the stars to fall to the earth, and trampled him down. So there's a cosmic dimension to the power struggle and the power grasp and the power seeking of this man. It causes some of the stars to fall to the earth, where they are trampled down. So this is not an ordinary or typical event. It even exalted itself as high as the prince of the hosts, and it took that which was continual away from him, and threw down the foundation of his temple. So Antiochus IV was a man with a severe God complex. So severe was his God complex that he had not only a thing against the Jewish religion, but all religion. He would not tolerate any rival worships to his exclusive worship, which he thought was his right and his due. So he of course controlled the temple, and he tried to forbid the rite and practice of circumcision, which the Jews grew more attached to by the New Testament because of that. And he slaughtered pigs to Zeus in the temple, their most sacrosanct place, with the most unclean animal, to a god they were commanded not to worship, at least. But he made them do it, and this inspired the revolt of the Maccabees, and he tried to destroy the Jews and Judaism. And because of transgression, an army was given over to oppose that, which is continual, and it threw the truth down to the ground, and it acted and prospered. So he discarded and threw the truth down to the ground. He had little use for it. He had no understanding of the Jewish religion or its traditions or its people or its truth or its gods. As far as he was concerned, he was the only God that existed, certainly the only one that mattered. Then I heard a certain saint speaking, and another saint said to that certain one who was speaking, "Till when is the vision concerning that which is continual, in the transgression that lays waste, to make his both the sacred place and the host to be trampled underfoot?" So we have the certainty that it will occur, we are uncertain as to when it will occur, and the answer occurred in the year 168 BM before Messiah. That's when Antiochus did away and discarded the temple and its practices and its rites and rituals, and set up shop to slaughter pigs to Zeus, and forbade circumcision and forbade the practice of the law. And he also he politicized the office of the high priesthood. He essentially sold it to the highest bidder rather than granting it to an Aaronic descendant. And he said to me, for 2,300 evening mornings, and then that which is sacred shall be right. So there were 2 sacrifices for atonement delivered daily at the Jewish temple, and so that number divided by 2,300 gives us with 1,500. That's roughly 3 years. And remember, in the year 186, Antiochus defiled the temple. In the year 165, the Maccabean rebellion and revolt, led by Judas Maccabeus, one of the sons of Simon, successfully restored the proper practices and rituals in the temple. So there's also an interpretation to this where he seeks the interpretation. So Daniel was not only adept at giving the interpretations of the dreams and visions of others, such as we witness in Nebuchadnezzar's dream in the 2nd chapter, but he was also reliant on Gabriel, who fills in and tells him the exact meaning of his personal vision and personal revelation, much in the same way as he has done in the 7th chapter. We're going to save that for a separate lesson. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you soon. Take care until then. Bye-bye.